On that cold winter night, the heavy snow was flying, covering everything around the suburban house. My brother Matthew and I, seeking warmth and joy in television programs, huddled together for companionship. Despite the world outside being sealed off by a thick layer of snow, the inside of the house was filled with light and laughter, until I noticed Matthew's smile had vanished. His sudden silence was like a chilly wind, blowing away the warm atmosphere in the bedroom. I turned to him and saw his brows furrowed, his eyes twinkling with unease. When I asked about his concerns, his voice revealed a hint of fear, saying he heard strange sounds outside. Initially, I thought it was just a joke to make me laugh, so I didn't take it seriously and continued to watch the TV screen with a casual laugh. But Matthew's silence persisted. His usually easily amused demeanor seemed to have been erased by something. I began to listen seriously, trying to catch the sound he mentioned. Sure enough, a faint and continuous noise came from outside, seemingly emanating from the snow, as if something was crawling slowly but forcefully. This sound was particularly clear in the quiet night, giving an indescribably odd feeling. I got up and walked to the window, trying to peer through the glass beaten by wind and snow into the outside world. But the thick snowflakes and the pitch-dark night concealed everything, leaving me unable to see anything. Just then, the whole house suddenly darkened. All sources of light vanished in an instant, leaving only profound and enclosed darkness. The power was out. The television suddenly stopped playing, and the joyful noise that had filled the air abruptly ceased, as if the room had been swallowed into a silent black hole. Matthew and I relied on each other in the darkness, searching for each other's presence. The crawling sound from outside also disappeared with this sudden darkness, slightly easing our tense emotions. However, this quiet was not the end, but the beginning of another unknown fear. But this peace did not last long, just a brief calm before the storm. We held each other's hands in the dark, trying to find some comfort in each other. However, the unease and fear, like spreading shadows, were hard to dispel. Our breathing sounded exceptionally loud in the quiet room, each breath filled with tension and uncertainty. After a while, we heard a new sound, not from the snow this time, but from above our heads on the roof. At first, it was just some light bumps, but it quickly turned into a clear crawling sound, like something moving on the roof. This sound was more unsettling than the crawling sound from the snow because it was too close, almost right above us. My heart was racing, and I could feel Matthew's hand trembling slightly. We tried not to make any sound, fearing that the unknown creature on the roof would notice our presence. But as time passed, those sounds became more bold, as if moving freely on the roof without any concern. In this situation, I felt we had to do something. I carefully took out my phone from my pocket, trying not to make a sound, and dialed my dad's number. On the other end, my dad's voice seemed to come from another world far away. After hearing our description, although somewhat skeptical, he comforted us by saying they were on their way back home. After hanging up the phone, Matthew and I clung to each other, waiting for our parents' return. The outside storm seemed to sense our fear, howling more fiercely. The sound on the roof finally stopped, but then we heard the sound of a vehicle driving into the driveway. Our parents were back. The arrival of our parents seemed to dispel all unease and fear. We quickly ran downstairs and told them everything that had happened. Although they were initially hard to believe, seeing our terrified expressions, they let us sleep together in the bedroom as a precaution against the strange noises. The whole night was unusually quiet, with no further incidents. The next morning, we went outside together to carefully check the surroundings of the house. The first thing we noticed was that the power lines had been mysteriously cut, explaining the sudden blackout. Then we found many strange footprints in the snow around the house, varying in size and direction, as if some animal was looking for an entrance. Even more terrifying, we found clear signs of climbing from the large tree next to the storage area all the way to the roof. There were also multiple footprints on the roof, distributed around the skylight, as if something had tried to hit a house. Dad immediately called the police, and according to their later investigation, it seemed indeed someone had tried to sneak into the house during the snowstorm, but had not succeeded because our doors and windows were locked. After our parents returned, he gave up. In the winter of 2008, I embarked on a journey of solo travel. As a young person who had just turned 18, I was filled with a longing for travel but lacked experience. My travel plans were not meticulous, and I even neglected to check the weather forecast, which led to the terrifying incident I encountered. That day, I was driving on a remote highway, enjoying the beautiful scenery along the way in high spirits. While immersed in the solitude of my journey, the sky suddenly filled with heavy snowfall. The wind and snow combined to drastically reduce visibility, almost obscuring the road ahead. Although a bit anxious, I had no choice but to find a place to wait out the snowstorm. Fortunately, I soon came across a gas station and decided to take refuge there. The warm light of the gas station stood out starkly against the snowy backdrop. Upon entering, I found a couple already sheltering from the snow. They seemed to have had an argument. The atmosphere was somewhat awkward. The man appeared to be in a good mood, unlike the woman, who seemed displeased. After exchanging a few words and commiserating about the sudden bad weather, I chose not to engage further, feeling somewhat uncomfortable with their dynamic, and instead waited quietly for the snow to ease. About half an hour later, as the snowstorm began to subside, the couple hastily left the gas station. I decided to wait a bit longer, grab something to eat, and prepare to face the wintry challenge once again. I actually quite enjoyed the solitude of a snowy day, the quiet surrounding me and the vast white expanse. As the chill of the storm gradually lessened, I continued driving along the snow-covered highway. The silence of the outside world contrasted sharply with the warmth inside my car, sending my thoughts adrift. After about 5 to 6 hours of driving, from noon until evening, hunger reminded me to refuel my energy. Luckily, I soon spotted a fast food restaurant sign by the roadside. Its warm light seemed inviting, so I decided to stop there for a simple dinner. Entering the fast food restaurant, I was greeted by the comfort of heating and the aroma of food. Just as I was about to queue up to order, a familiar figure caught my eye. To my surprise, a man I had encountered by the roadside, who also seemed to have chosen this place for a break. He was sitting alone in a corner, holding a fast food meal but seemingly lost in thought. When our eyes accidentally met, I could clearly sense the hint of panic in his expression, as if my sudden appearance had startled him. He quickly stood up, nodded at me as a polite greeting, but his actions were evidently rushed. Curious about his reaction, I ordered my meal, planning to eat in my car and continue my journey. As I prepared to leave, I noticed the man also got up hastily and left the restaurant. He was alone in contrast to the couple I had seen at the gas station earlier. Back in my car with the meal placed on the passenger seat, I watched through the window as the man hurriedly entered his vehicle, started the engine, and drove off. His movements seemed flustered, especially when he realized I was watching him, his expression turning even stranger and somewhat unnatural. A sense of wonder briefly crossed my mind, but I quickly dismissed these thoughts. Focusing on my meal, I readied myself to resume the journey. Despite some strange encounters, I looked forward to the rest of the trip and finally reaching my destination. Not long after driving off, I unexpectedly saw the man stop his car by the roadside, seemingly dealing with some issue. Driven by an instinctual kindness, I slowed down and pulled over not far from him. His vehicle, with its front wheel stuck in the snow and the whole car tilted, appeared to be in the midst of an unforeseen predicament. Stepping out into the cold air, the falling snow made me shiver. I called out to him, offering help. He turned around in a light. I could see a trace of nervousness quickly replaced by an effort to maintain politeness. He explained that he had a flat tire and was trying to fix it, not needing assistance, his voice tinged with embarrassment and helplessness. Nodding in understanding, I was about to return to my car and carry on. However, just as I was about to turn around, I involuntarily noticed something under a roughly placed blanket on the back seat of his car. It seemed like something was intentionally hidden. A sense of foreboding rose in my heart, my intuition suggesting that there was an untold story behind it. Out of concern for the sudden doubt that arose, I tentatively asked, "Where's your partner?" "I didn't see her leave with you from the gas station." His facial expression instantly stiffened, his gaze evasive, not directly addressing my question. Instead, his grip on the wrench tightened. His body tensed, slowly approaching me with each step revealing an unusual tension in the air. It was then, amidst the groan and ease, that I noticed a faint knocking sound coming from inside the car, as if someone was attempting to signal for help. My heart skipped a beat, realizing that the man might not be as harmless as he appeared. Without hesitation, I turned and ran back to my vehicle. Fortunately, due to the cold weather, I hadn't turned off the engine, so my car was ready to make a quick getaway. As I drove away from the scene, my mind raced with what had just happened. After putting a safe distance between myself and the man, I pulled over, my heart still pounding. It was clear to me that I needed to alert the authorities. I grabbed my phone and dialed the emergency services, providing them with a detailed account of my unsettling encounter, hoping they could intervene in time. The police responded swiftly and found the car abandoned by the roadside not long after. They told me they discovered a woman, unconscious and bound, in the trunk of the car. It turned out that the man had assaulted her shortly after we had parted ways, rendering her unconscious before stowing her away in the trunk. The blanket on the back seat was indeed used to conceal bloodstains and cover up his crime. Reflecting on the incident, I felt a sense of gratitude for my intuition and quick action, which might have saved a life. During an exceptionally cold winter, Amy and I planned a weekend trip to a remote cabin in the mountains. The cabin, left by one of Amy's distant relatives, was said to be situated in an extremely secluded spot, surrounded by vast forests and stretching mountain ranges. We were full of anticipation for this escape from the city, eager to find a tranquil moment in nature. We had prepared enough food, warming equipment, and emergency tools, making all possible preparations. However, as the start of many adventure stories, we did not anticipate that the weather would become a significant variable in our journey. On the day of departure, the sky was clear and the sun was shining brightly. But as we drove deeper into the secluded mountains, the weather gradually turned gloomy, and light snow began to fall, soon turning into a blizzard. The blizzard made visibility extremely poor, and we could only slow down and follow the lights of the car ahead, groping our way forward in the wide expanse of snow. When we arrived at the cabin, the blizzard had reached its peak, turning the world outside into a whiteout, almost completely swallowed by the wind and snow. We hurriedly unloaded our luggage and rushed into the cabin. Fortunately, the interior of the cabin was still warm, and there was enough firewood in the fireplace for us to weather this sudden storm. On the first night, we sat around the fireplace, trying our best to ignore the raging storm outside, enjoying the warmth and peace. However, as the night deepened, the sound of the wind and snow began to make us uneasy. We tried to tell each other light-hearted stories to distract ourselves, but the feeling of fear in our hearts grew stronger. Just as we were preparing to go to bed, we suddenly heard something moving outside, as if someone or something was wandering around the cabin. At first, we thought it was just an illusion caused by the blizzard, but as the sound became more apparent, we had to admit that this was a natural phenomenon. We stared nervously out of the window, unable to see anything, but the sound of the unknown object moving confirmed that something was approaching from outside. Amy suggested calling the police, but in such a blizzard, we knew that even if we called, rescue could not arrive immediately. We decided to check all the doors and windows carefully to ensure they were securely locked. Then we found a relatively hidden corner next to the fireplace, trying to stay as calm as possible and wait for daylight. We spent the entire night in tension and fear, but the sounds from outside sometimes present and sometimes not, making us restless. When the first rays of sunlight penetrated the window and shone into our hidden corner, we could hardly believe we had survived the long night. Although the blizzard had subsided outside, the chaos and thick snow left behind made the surroundings of the cabin look unfamiliar. We cautiously opened the door, and the world outside was serene and covered in white, a stark contrast to the terrifying atmosphere of the previous night. We decided to look around outside to find the source of those mysterious sounds from last night. As we stepped through the fresh snow, we noticed some unusual footprints which did not look like they were made by any wild animal, but more like a pair of shoes worn by a human. These footprints circled around the cabin and then seemed to extend into the depths of the forest. We followed the footprints for a distance until they disappeared into the dense trees. We dared not venture further, only looking back at the cabin with confusion. Who was out here in such terrible weather? Why were they wandering around our cabin? These questions left us feeling uneasy. Deciding not to delve deeper, we returned to the cabin, started packing our luggage, and prepared to leave. This trip left us with too many unsolved mysteries. Although we did not encounter any direct danger, the feeling of being watched by something unknown made us very uncomfortable. We did not bring up that night's experience again, nor did we share the story with anyone. This trip meant to be an opportunity for tranquility and an escape from the daily hustle and bustle, unexpectedly turned into an adventure filled with unknowns and fear. Although we safely returned to the familiar city, the unresolved mystery still left a deep mark in our hearts, reminding us that some places, perhaps, should never be disturbed.